Hi, Tahlia. Thank you so much for joining me today. We got a chance to talk to Katie last time. This time we get to talk to
Mhm.
you about we wrote this big guide around agents and analytics and how data teams can sort of think about context curation. And I want to first thank you for giving your thoughts and perspective and feedback because you live this in the field with the teams that use Hex today. So I thought it would be fitting to invite you on, ask you a few questions, get your background, and just kind of hear what it's like in the trenches. What are you seeing and what can people be doing better? So first, thank you for joining.
Yeah. Happy to be here. This is great.
Awesome. And tell us about yourself. What do you do at Hex?
So I'm a customer engineer at Hex, which means that I am being kind of pulled in when we're working with customers who are trying to push initiatives into things like getting, agentic workflows, working on their data workflows. And I'm generally sort of a resource for our customers when it comes to like technical enablement, education, or just like strategic initiatives that they're trying to get off the ground in that sort of like data work sphere of things. So that can be everything from like early onboarding of customers and introducing you to Hex and like how to use it, all the way up to like more complex deployments when it comes to like new teams are coming into Hex. We've never seen it before, and like, can you do XYZ as well as ABC, which we already use you for? So yeah, kind of just involved in that entire sort of customer implementation and enablement side of things.
Nice. So it's probably safe to say you're like our customer's favorite person most of the time. It sounds like.
I come in and I solve a lot of problems usually, and more than I create, I think, for the most part. But yeah, I think like I've been at tech for a long time now, so I've seen us go from our customers being a very small niche type of data team up to much larger, more complex data teams as well. So I think the agentic side of Hex is really starting to show just how important and how universal data can be in organizations. But then the data work itself is evolving because to meet that need. And so, yeah, getting the chance to kind of see how all these different types of companies are approaching the more contextual side of data work and like ensuring that agentic workflows have what they need in order to be successful. It's been really interesting seeing that spectrum across the many different types of customers that Hex has.
Yeah, I think but in a previous life I was in post sales as well, doing customer success. And that was probably my favorite part of the job was getting to see like the same problem from like 15 different angles. And it really
Yeah,
sharpens you and
it
makes you cool.
it almost feels like cheating,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, oh my god, where did you answer this? Because I saw another team have that problem, and this is how they answered it. So it's a little bit of a cheat book.
Yeah. But it's good. We all need, I think,
Yeah,
some of that in our life a little bit. Well, I mean,
yeah.
so like I said, you were such a great resource for helping me just like really gut check. Like, does this sound right? Does this feel right? Does this how people
Mhm.
think about this kind of stuff? And like specifically context curation and rules files and semantic models and all of the different pieces that fit together. So like how do you go into conversations with the teams like that are on this sort of like very broad spectrum about how they're using
Mhm.
AI? Like what sort of things do you try to learn from them to best help you orient of like, oh, this is the best right thing that I can recommend for them right now?
Honestly, the AI conversations are really no different than a lot of other conversations in that the first thing that I'm trying to do is make sure that we're all using the same language in the same way. So like when someone talks about, "Oh, we're AI ready." And I'm like, "Okay, tell me what that means for you." Like how are you using AI or what do you think that's going to enable for you in your company? And then realizing that, yeah, I'm glad I asked that because we would have had some very like mismatched jargon or expectations based on language. So honestly, I usually start with just asking a bunch of questions like, where are you at? How are you thinking of how your data stack fits into these things? What is your culture of your company, let alone your data team? Like your data team culture might be super gritty and willing to experiment, but maybe your stakeholders aren't. So there's also questions about just like general company wide. How are you thinking about where AI might play a role for you all, and how does that change people might have? So honestly, conversations usually start with me just asking a bunch of questions, and then we kind of then from there I can say, okay, I know kind of where to fit you in terms of like the buckets of the types of customers or companies that we talk to, and that kind of then tells me, okay, now I know what next questions to ask.
Nice. And as what's the kind of typical buckets you would slot them into? Like, do you have like three, five? Like, what's the sort of magic mix?
Yeah, honestly, it's I'd say less of buckets and more like like when you're like playing with a color composite wheel, how you can kind of like get really nuanced, but it's still purple, it's still a pink.
Mm,
It's kind of more like that. So I'd say like some common things are some teams have it's often kind of like about trust, like how much do they trust AI alone, one, the technology, and then two, how much do they trust their non-technical stakeholders
mm,
to do something with that data. And so that's a really big bifurcation point is, do you understand how these AI technologies work? They are non-deterministic systems. What does that mean for like how you frame understanding how they work, how you're going to implement them? But then some teams really vary on the trust scale of like, I cannot give my non-technical stakeholders a wrong answer ever because they will just take it and run with it and like I don't know and it'll be the end of the world. And other people are more on the side of, yep, we have smart people, we're giving them a new tool. It's on them to, evaluate and understand like, does this make sense? How did I get this number? What do I do with it? So that's a big binary as well. And then in terms of like data, the data itself also has sort of a go, no go sort of status, I would say. Like a lot of people have really messy data, and that is I'm not calling anybody out because Lord knows I have worked in teams where it's like, oh my God, that's an embarrassing mess of a warehouse.
yeah.
But that is not conducive for working in these more agentic workflows. And so that is a huge part of knowing how committed someone is based on like where they are at with their like data maturity and data cleanliness.
Yeah. I think Katie said it when I chatted with her, and you're reiterating it now, which is like the data is like the mirror to the business in a lot of ways. And it tells you a lot about how they're structured and how they operate and what they
Yep.
value. And it's
Yep.
like a litmus test a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've talked to some customers and they're super worried that they're super behind. And they're like, these semantic model things, like, I'm not seeing benefit from them. And I go and I look at their data and I'm like, oh, it's because you've modeled your data immaculately. Like, your semantic model isn't necessarily adding a ton of information because your data is so perfectly modeled. Like, maybe you don't need to invest there and you actually could get a lot further just with what you have. And then other teams they're like, "Yeah, we have multiple tables with the same column names with slightly different definitions." And I'm like, "I don't know how to help you with that. Like, that sounds like a you problem that you all need to figure out naming conventions and metric definitions and data modeling habits and things like that." So Katie's spot on. Data reflects the company and it reflects that capacity for expanding into these more agentic workflows.
Yeah. And I think I love what you said too about like they think they're behind. Like, can you talk a little bit more about what does that manifestation look like in your conversations? Like, I don't imagine there's many companies that have like nailed it, So like I think that being behind is sort of like almost like you're on track, but like how do you kind of have those conversations and what do you do to reassure?
Yeah, there's so much angst on this. Like, I think like, okay, maybe not 50%, but 40% of the conversations I have are just about, no, you're chill, you're good, um,
Yeah, you got
and
it.
just kind of talking them off the cliff a little bit. I think there's so much urgency and pressure to just start using these things and magically be experiencing like efficiency gains and new stakeholders getting their own answers and like there's just so much urgency and small things. And so I think that's one part of like what we do with customer engineers at Hex is just help break it down. And that's a big part of it. It's just like, okay, cool. Like walk me through, these context pillars. Like at Hex, we have kind of broken things down. It's like there's four main types of context that you're going to want to be thinking about when it comes to like curating your data. Let's just talk through like where you stand in all those four. Like what's going to be the most next impactful, like low hanging fruit thing that you can do. And just like take this big, scary, like, how do I implement AI at my company? And just be like, okay, cool. Like, how do I get my data ready? Like, how do I enable those first batch of users? It's really just about like making the problem more bite size in a lot of ways. And yeah, most companies are all worried that they're behind. Some of them are behind, and others are
Sure.
like totally
Yeah.
fine.
Do you have like a particular story or a conversation with a customer where you've kind of had to like assess them in real time and like how did that go? Like what sort of things did they say back to you?
This is really pretty common is like customers come, they're like, I'm not sure how ready we are. Was talking with the customer. We were actually went on site with them to kind of just like get hands on, figure out how to get them ready and enabled for some of this AI work. And I did some like pre-work ahead of time, kind of taking a peek at what I can see from my end about like what their data looks like and whatnot. I didn't see that they had any like metadata on their warehouse. So like I was like, oh no, maybe this is one of those companies that actually is kind of behind. Like I couldn't see exactly. I was like, there's no column descriptors, there are no table descriptors. Like, well, crap. And I think they were like super excited about semantic modeling, and I'm like, oh, could we out and like maybe clean up your data before we get to like semantic modeling? Um,
Yep.
so I was a little nervous like going into it. I was like, I don't know how clean this is going to be. This might take a lot of work. But we got in, and it turns out that they were using a different way of enriching their data that I can't see from my end. And I was like, oh, that completely changes the conversation we're about to have. Awesome. It turns out they did already have a lot of the metadata because it was coming from their DBT side of things, and they've actually been pretty good when it comes to like auditing, or not auditing, but like enriching the data on their DBT models. So that changed the conversation. I was like, oh, you're fine. You're good. Okay, cool. So now it makes sense why you're thinking about semantic models. Now I can get into the nitty gritty about like, where do you want to host these things? Where do you want to, keep source of truth? Like, how are you thinking about layering views on top of those metrics and things like that? Like, we could get way more detailed onto that like more advanced level of things. Um, but going into it, they were like, "Yeah, I don't know if we're ready. Like, is this gonna be good?" And I came in and I was like, "Oh, well, now that I see and know that you have like good DBT modeling practices and good documentation, like absolutely, you guys should not be worrying nearly so much as you are. You're actually in a really good spot to start rapidly experimenting with like how effective these different types of models, semantic models are for agentic responses."
Do you have like an update from them, like where they're at today or at which milestone they've crossed since then?
Yeah, they're doing great. They have gone ahead and they decided to do a bit more of a custom, like roll your own semantic model approach. That they then like has some crazy cool GitHub hooks that push things into hex. Like it's a little bit more custom and like more manual than I thought that they were gonna go, but they've got something that works. And yeah, they're starting to see some really cool like very positive responses from users who are starting to use those models to ask natural language questions. So they're still like in that early iterating phase on the semantic model side of things, but seems to be going really well. And what's really nice about all of this is that honestly, we all knew that we should be documenting our data well, right? And we all knew that we should be cleaning up after ourselves as we're making new models and experimenting with new metrics or KPIs, and getting rid of stuff that we're no longer using. Um, but what's great is now we have to, right? Like as data practitioners, wanting to be successful, like the agents, it's non-negotiable. You have to have well documented, nice and clean data, or well defined, or well like described. And so in a lot of senses, this can be like a really good way to just do spring cleaning in a way that you kind of always meant to but haven't gotten around to. So it's kind of nice that it has that extra reason to like invest in what you kind of been avoiding for a long time anyway.
Yeah. When you say spring cleaning, you don't mean tip the whole house over and turn it upside down. You're like, go room by room and just
Mm-mm.
like really, or maybe the rooms you
Exactly.
use most often. Like, let's clean those up first.
Yep.
Would you
Yep.
agree? Like that's sort of the sentiment there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we are not gonna Marie Kondo your entire house in one go, right? Like you do it drawer by drawer, right? So
Yeah,
I think that's actually a really good analogy.
it is actually. That feels like there's a blog post in there somewhere. Maybe
No, yeah, we
you
can
could
make it
write that
happen.
one. Yeah, yeah. Throw it away if it doesn't bring you joy in your data warehouse.
Yes.
With all of these kind of ways that you could go with what you should start with and how you should do this work and what you should prioritize, like what did you struggle with giving feedback on a guide like this where you were almost like putting things in step one, two, three, where
Mm-hmm.
practically like sometimes that's just not how the world works. But like, was there
Yeah.
anything in particular you struggled with?
Yeah, I mean, even here in text, we had, we are confident that this context side of things is really was what going to make the engine work. But even we weren't quite certain for a while, like what's the most impactful thing you can do on average. And it's taken talking to a lot of customers and trying it with a lot of customers to kind of pull out what those common denominator best practices are And so being able to, now I can come in and say, cool, you don't have, column descriptors on everything. Aim for that. That is huge. It's highly impactful. But it turns out the most impactful thing that you could do is, go endorse your data. That's much easier in a smaller bite. So I think the thing that's been nice to be able to give to customers is sort of like a rationale behind or like a stack ranking of what's
Hmm.
going to help, what's going to move the needle. Again, it's taking the big scary thing and just saying like, here's what we've seen so far. Like your mileage may vary, but if you do A and then B, probably you'll arrive at the right time to do C. And that kind of structure is nice. People like the structure. And again, non-deterministic systems mean that having rigid ways of approaching things like isn't going to work. It'll depend a bit on company. It'll depend on the data, on your teams. But common themes now we have definitely seen enough of to be more confident in, which is, yeah, like where that guide comes from is, yeah, there was a lot of hemming and hawing on, no, this next, or how long does that take? How long does this take? And again, like your mileage will vary, but the general concepts and structures behind those ideas of intentionally make a change, evaluate how that change affected things, rinse and repeat, is really, I think, like the core thing.
Yeah, like get that muscle strong.
Hmm.
And then it'll start to be as natural as like, ooh, that query doesn't look right. Oh, that SQL doesn't perform as well. And like you get that
Yep,
the intuition that I think a lot of us like to have when we're in our kind of vibe, like flow state. But with
exactly.
AI, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah,
You mentioned like timelines and like when you should do A and B and C. Like I think timelines were a big sort of point of contention discussion with a guide like this because
yeah,
even I have an allergy to saying like 1 week because that can feel a little arbitrary and also like depending on your team, a week can feel like an eternity or a week can be like an hour. Depending on like which planet you're on in the solar system. So like how do you think about that when you go and talk to customers? Like, how do you balance effort and time? And like, what should maybe teams think about when they're doing something similar to like judge, okay, how long would this reasonably take me to do something like this? To give
yeah,
them some guidance there.
yeah. That is a very tough one. The thing that I keep coming back to when I'm working with customers, especially in like the hairiest sort of examples, is what are the 4 questions that you want your stakeholders to be able to answer without you in this like self-service agentic sort of approach to things? I don't want 10 questions. I want 4, right? Like what are the data tables that you need for those 4 questions? Go enrich those. Like how long is that going to take you? How many columns is that? Okay, cool. Now you have a good estimate there. How long is it going to take you to endorse those tables? Only a couple minutes. Cool, because there's not that many because we've limited it to 4 questions. And so
Hmm.
it really is like we have this inclination to just want to boil the ocean and like stick the landing and have AI work, but it's like team by team, case by case, question by question, or like theme by theme, maybe not question by question. So it's kind of, I understand why people want to be able to ask marketing questions and finance questions and sales questions and whatever all at the same time of their data. But by breaking it down into smaller pieces, that's what's actually going to let you estimate more accurately, like how long is this going to take? And you have an outcome, right? You can measure the outcome much more clearly too, right? Like I was only evaluating these 4 user stakeholders kind of types of questions. Have I done good? Has it worked? As opposed to everyone's asking questions. I don't know which ones are right. Like, how do I even go into audit that? So again, narrow that focus. And then once you get a system working and you're at bats and you build up those muscles and you get the intuition, then it becomes faster and faster too. So
Hmm.
if there's any advice that I give to customers, it's truly like scope it down. Scope it down. Yeah.
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 Go slow to go fast. Sounds
Exactly.
like a good idea.
Yeah.
And and I think too, like maybe this is maybe a like byproduct of the BI dashboard era, which was like a question equals a query or a question equals a dashboard. I
Hmm.
think agentic stuff really breaks that paradigm because a question would create context, which could then fuel infinite number of questions theoretically. Like
Yeah.
every small variation of that original question now also gets to be answered. Like,
Yep.
do you find that sort of as like an aha or an unlock, or is that even true? from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think we're not far enough along for that to have been, like, truly felt in, like, a deep sort of way, but I think we're getting really close because, yeah, soon it will be I did this initial upfront work, and now I have an array of people who can all use that work and all self-serve and all, just, like, get into their own individual grooves and not have to have that more, like, one-to-one sort of mentality, and I think yes, it's like that we're gonna all start feeling that really quickly, I think, when we start thinking about, like, what are the most important things that you can do that have that sort of, like, many to one relationship when it comes to, like, context engineering or curation.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and where do you see teams getting stuck in some of this? I mean, it sounds like most of the time is actually spent on the what do we care most about? Let's align ourselves around the scope that we want to focus on.
Mhm.
Is that sort of where you see them get stuck, or is it okay, we've decided, but then oops, we're stuck in data hell or,
Yeah,
enablement?
yeah. Um, no, I think I see the people get stuck or they're most scared of is, like, how do we know it's working?
Mm,
And that question, because like, assuming you have enough buy-in to, invest the resources and the people and cleaning up your data in the ways that aren't going to be necessary, I'm assuming a bunch here in terms of, like, you've done that work. You've done the basic, like, lowest hanging fruit stuff that we've recommended. Now what? People are like, "Well, how do I know it's working?" Um, and people really want, like, rigid structures to be like, "Yep, answered 80% correct, good job." Um but there's a lot of more nuance when it comes to, like, evaluating how agents are performing and, like, what outcome is coming from those types of prompts. And so I think people get a little stuck or a little bit, like, caught in the mire again when it comes time to, like, rinse and repeat. And honestly, like, there isn't a hard and fast rule there that we've seen consistently yet either. A lot of it comes down to go talk to your people. Did it get
mhm,
them the help that they needed? Go look at, the threads that people have asked or the questions that people have asked. That alone can be insightful. What were the questions that people actually started asking? Like, was it what you expected? It wasn't? Oh, well, let's go plan for that. Or no, those are good questions, but they're not being answered right or not using the data that I thought it would or whatnot. Like, there's a lot of sort of curiosity driven investigation that data teams now have to kind of get into that don't have a firm rule book. So honestly, I'm guessing that this is actually where, like, the next big crisis is going to be is like, how do I keep iterating and how do I keep making sure that over time the work that I'm doing is, like, building up to better and better and more powerful data answers.
interesting. Yeah, I can certainly see that because maybe like data work is never done. I think
Yeah.
anybody in a data role will agree with you on that. But like a deliverable is, for lack of a better term, like a dashboard is somewhat done, or
Hmm.
like a product, a way to deliver the insights that you've promised the business. But I think what I'm finding and seeing with like this agentic context engineering, like it's very much the same as data work. Like it is never done. It is an always on,
Yep.
always need to be observed, need to be improved, need to be tuned machine. And I think over time, like agents will probably get better at even doing some of that work.
Yep.
Like once you tell an agent, hey, you should make sure that such and such is doing XYZ. But for now, like that's on the humans. Like that is the human in the loop, if you were,
Exactly.
and what's like the thing that's making you most excited about that future that you're laid out, where you've got the one to many and you've got the team sort of doing the thing that you're talking about really, really well. Like what just keeps you energized and jazzed about working on this stuff?
Yeah, it's really cool when you see some of the more skeptical folks, like, share a screenshot of one of their stakeholders being, like, over the moon with now being able to just self-serve their own answers. Like, it has been such a treat to get to see all of those start to pile up, and that's really exciting getting to see and those are just often, like, the little small tests, right? So these are, like, the controlled, rollouts and, like, little test cases where people are like, "Okay, we're gonna try this out." So I'm really excited to see people have confidence in themselves and in these products that they can start really relying on it and pushing it forward and, like, helping their companies arrive at whatever those data goals and data insights that they, were trying to drive. So it's been exciting to see.
Nice. Do you have like a particular story in mind when you think of that?
I just, there was one customer in particular who was like, I don't know, like you want my stakeholders to ask questions in Slack, not even in Hex, just like random questions in Slack using like the at Hex, spin me up a threads thing with no context, no background, like no like rigorous data training necessarily to just ask questions and get answers and call that good. And we're like, that's the idea. Yep. And
Yeah.
then he came back later and was like, yeah, here's a screenshot of my stakeholder doing it, nailing it and loving it. And we're like trying not to say like, I told you so.
Yeah, I know. It's like you love that, but you hate it. You're
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah. You're like,
if you'd have
mm-hmm.
just like stopped fighting me, like I'm on your side. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to help you, dude.
Yeah.
But well, that's cool. Well, I hope you have many, many more of those
Me-
stories to share in the coming weeks, months, because I mean, the stuff's just getting better.
Yeah.
It feels like it's kind of spooky.
It is. It is.
Um, yeah, and
Yay.
I guess yeah, it's like yay. But I'm like always very nice to my agents. I always say thank you and please, just in case.
Just in
Gotta
case.
hedge my bets there.
Right. Solid.
Yeah. Well, any parting thoughts? Like maybe if somebody is listening to this and they're just like, they're that guy. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
Yeah.
I don't buy it. Like what could you maybe share as like a food for thought or like maybe resources or something that they could kind of see to like know it's real?
Totally. I think I'm going to go back to like break it down. Like break it down. What is your goal? And if the goal, is just slightly faster, easier ways for your data team to work and you don't want to give it out to like your broader stakeholders because you're too worried, cool. Like acknowledge what that state is, like acknowledge what your company can take, but like build toward that and build toward the small version of that that you can have confidence in. And then you can, adapt accordingly. But yeah, scope it down, keep it small and articulate what you want your outcomes to be. So I think honestly, again, not that truly that different from data work and working with business stakeholders
No.
on any business question or data question. But yeah, that would be my advice is like, don't let the miasma of angst and like market hype fill you with too much
Or,
dread.
or like feel like you're
Yeah.
behind or
Yeah.
like you're too late to get started. It's
Yeah.
like, nope,
Nope. Not
I
too
don't
late.
think so at all.
Not too late at all. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much, Talia. I mean, um, I'm sure we'll be back to have several more, but
Happy.
for now, I will let you carry on with your day and thank you again.
Yeah, for sure. Bye.